30,000 years ago, hearing wolves beyond your campfire meant only one thing. Death was somewhere in the darkness. So how did humanity's greatest predator become its closest companion? The answer began with one simple decision: to survive. To us, wolves belonged to forests and mountains. During the Ice Age, they ruled a far harsher world, the Mammoth Steppe, a vast expanse of frozen grassland stretching across Europe, Asia, and North America. Winters lasted for months, temperatures plunged far below freezing, and food could vanish for weeks. In this unforgiving landscape, wolves became one of evolution's greatest predators, not because they were the strongest, but because they hunted together. Older wolves provided experience, prime adults led the chase, and younger members learned by watching. Success depended on coordination, patience, and trust, rather than individual strength. Scientific studies suggest Ice Age wolf packs traveled dozens of kilometers a day, with territories spanning hundreds or even thousands of square kilometers as they followed migrating mammoths, bison, horses, reindeer, musk oxen, and giant deer. Finding prey, however, was only the beginning. Wolves rarely attacked the strongest animal. They observed herds until they found weakness and injured bison, an exhausted reindeer slowed by deep snow, or a young mammoth separated from its family. Even then, most hunts failed. Every unsuccessful chase burned precious calories, while every successful one carried serious risks. A kick from a bison could shatter ribs, an elk's antlers could pierce lungs, and even a desperate reindeer could cripple a hunter. For wolves, one broken leg or an infected wound could doom the entire pack. Killing prey didn't end the struggle. The scent of fresh blood quickly attracted cave lions, cave hyenas, and rival wolf packs, all eager to steal a meal they hadn't earned. Wolves sometimes fought, but more often retreated because losing a hunter was more dangerous than losing a carcass. This constant pressure shaped their evolution. They became endurance hunters that conserved energy, avoided unnecessary conflict, and relied on teamwork instead of reckless aggression. Yet even perfect cooperation couldn't defeat the Ice Age. Harsh winters, disappearing herds, violent storms, and growing pups meant survival always balanced on a knife's edge. Dominance never guaranteed safety. The wolves that endured weren't simply the fastest or fiercest. They were the ones that adapted, avoided needless risks, and recognized new opportunities before anyone else. Around 30,000 years ago, one such opportunity appeared on the frozen plains. It had no claws. It couldn't outrun a wolf. But it carried fire, shaped stone into deadly weapons, and unknowingly created one of the most reliable food sources the Ice Age had ever seen. Those creatures were humans. At first glance, humans looked like easy prey. They had no claws, no fangs, no thick fur, and no speed to outrun a charging predator. Alone on the Mammoth Steppe, they seemed weaker than almost every animal around them. But evolution had given humans something far more powerful than strength: the ability to solve problems. Stone blades sliced through hide with razor-sharp precision. Spears struck dangerous animals from a safer distance. Fire turned the night into a place of warmth and protection. And shelters built from wood, hides, and even mammoth bones made brutal winters survivable. None of these inventions made humans physically stronger than wolves. Together, they made them far more efficient. Humans also hunted differently. They planned days ahead, remembered migration routes, communicated complex ideas, and coordinated large groups toward a single goal. Most importantly, they shared knowledge. A successful hunting strategy, a better spear design, or a newly discovered migration corridor didn't disappear with one individual. It became part of the group's collective memory. Unlike biological evolution, which required thousands of generations, human knowledge accumulated within a single lifetime, giving every generation a better chance than the one before it. The greatest difference, however, appeared after the hunt. Wolves consumed nearly every edible part of a carcass because the next meal might be days away. Humans couldn't. During long winters, they prioritized the richest resources: fat, organs, marrow, hides, and tendons, because they provided the greatest survival value. Transporting an entire mammoth across frozen ground was impossible without carts or pack animals. So hunters carried only what justified the energy required. Meat, connective tissue, and partially stripped bones were often left behind, not because they lacked value, but because carrying them cost more than they were worth. Without realizing it, humans were creating something almost unknown in the Ice Age: a predictable food source. Wolves followed migrating herds that could vanish overnight, but human hunting camps returned to productive valleys, river crossings, and migration routes season after season. That meant discarded bones and scraps appeared in the same places again and again. Approaching those camps remained dangerous. People defended them with spears, stones, fire, and teamwork. But staying too far away meant missing one of the most reliable meals on the frozen plains. Somewhere between reckless aggression and fearful avoidance, a few wolves found the perfect balance. They were curious enough to approach, careful enough to keep their distance, and patient enough to wait. Without knowing it, they had taken the first step toward becoming something the Ice Age had never seen. The first wolf that approached a human camp wasn't trying to change history. It was simply trying to survive. Long before it saw the fire, it smelled smoke drifting across the frozen plain, mixed with cooked meat, fresh blood, cracked bones, drying hides, animal fat, and people. With more than 200 million scent receptors, a wolf experienced the world through smell, and a human camp announced itself across the landscape like a beacon. For most wolves, however, that scent meant danger. Humans carried spears, defended one another, stayed active after sunset, and could kill from a distance. Rushing into camp was often fatal. Staying away meant surrendering one of the most dependable food sources in the Ice Age. Between those extremes were a few wolves with a different temperament. They weren't fearless or tame, only calmer. They stopped beyond spear range, watched from the shadows, and waited until hunters finished butchering animals or abandoned the camp. Sometimes they found only scattered bones, sometimes almost nothing. But occasionally they discovered marrow-filled bones, scraps of meat, fat, skin, and connective tissue, small rewards that could mean survival during a harsh winter. The real advantage wasn't abundance, it was reliability. While migrating herds changed direction and severe weather disrupted hunts, humans repeatedly returned to the same productive valleys and river crossings, unintentionally creating recurring feeding opportunities. Natural selection quietly favored these cautious scavengers. The bold approached too aggressively and died. The fearful stayed away and often went hungry. The calm wolves survived more winters, reproduced more successfully, and gradually passed on traits linked to lower fear and reduced aggression. Modern genetics shows that temperament is influenced by genes regulating stress, curiosity, and social behavior, while studies of foxes, birds, and other animals reveal the same pattern. Behavior changes before appearance. Around human camps, evolution, not people, became the selective force. Winter after winter, generation after generation, calmer wolves gained a small advantage that slowly spread through the population. Nothing dramatic happened overnight. The wolves still looked like wolves. They still hunted, still howled, and still feared humans. But with every generation, a few became just a little less afraid, and eventually, humans began noticing something remarkable. These wolves weren't simply scavengers anymore. They were becoming useful. At first, humans paid little attention to the wolves lingering beyond the firelight. Predators were part of everyday life. Cave lions, hyenas, bears, and wolves all competed for the same landscape. But wolves were different. They didn't appear once and disappear. They kept returning. Hunters chased them away with stones, shouting, and burning branches, yet the same calm wolves came back, waited at a safe distance, and scavenged only after the camp fell silent. Over time, both species began recognizing a pattern. Humans became a predictable source of food, while those wolves became a predictable part of the landscape. For generations, people probably never intended to tame wolves. In fact, modern wolf biology suggests the familiar story of raising abandoned wolf pups is unlikely to explain domestication on a large scale. Wolves have a very short socialization window, and adults retain strong wild instincts even when hand-raised. Instead, the environment around human camps gradually selected wolves that already possessed calmer temperaments. Fearful wolves stayed too far away to benefit. Reckless wolves approached too closely and were killed. The calm wolves survived because they found the balance between caution and curiosity. Modern genetics supports this process. Small differences in the genes controlling fear, stress, and social behavior can produce noticeable changes in temperament, and over hundreds of generations, those differences became evolutionary advantages. Domestication research also shows that selecting for calmer behavior often leads to unexpected physical changes: shorter snouts, smaller teeth, different coat colors, floppier ears, and more expressive faces. Behavior changes first, appearance follows later. That's why the earliest ancestors of dogs probably looked almost identical to wolves, even though they had already begun behaving differently. Most wolves continued hunting across the wilderness exactly as they always had. But one small population was adapting to life beside humans. Over thousands of years, that behavioral gap became a genetic one. By the time people realized these wolves were different, evolution had already been working for millennia. And those calmer wolves were about to become far more than scavengers. They were becoming partners. For thousands of years, humans hunted while wolves scavenged, and neither species trusted the other. Yet evolution rarely changes the world overnight. It advances through countless small advantages until an entirely new relationship emerges. At some point, humans began noticing that the wolves lingering near their camps weren't just following people. They were following the same animals people wanted to hunt. Humans relied mainly on sight, reading tracks, broken branches, disturbed snow, and distant herds. Wolves perceived a different world. With more than 200 million scent receptors, they could detect animals humans couldn't see, distinguish individuals within a herd, and identify the old, injured, sick, pregnant, or exhausted long before the chase began. Rather than attacking the strongest prey, wolves searched for the one most likely to fail. Their coordinated hunting strategy isolated vulnerable animals while minimizing the risk of injury, an advantage refined through hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Once the weakest animal was separated, however, the balance changed. Wolves still had to attack at close range, risking broken bones or fatal wounds from a single kick. Humans didn't. Stone-tipped spears, throwing weapons, coordinated ambushes, and careful planning allowed them to kill from a safer distance. Without intending it, each species compensated for the other's greatest weakness. Wolves excelled at finding the right target. Humans excelled at finishing the hunt. The carcass that followed was often large enough for both. The benefits continued after sunset. Human camps became vulnerable as darkness reduced visibility and predators began to move. Wolves experienced the night differently. Their hearing detected distant movement, and their noses sensed bears, cave lions, rival wolf packs, or unfamiliar humans long before people noticed anything unusual. A change in posture, quiet growling, or sudden alertness could provide valuable warning, even if humans never knew exactly what the wolves had detected. Trust didn't appear overnight. It grew through thousands of repeated encounters. Fear became tolerance. Tolerance became opportunity. And without either species planning it, two predators had begun hunting the same world together. That quiet partnership may have changed not only the fate of wolves, but the future of humanity itself. Around 45,000 years ago, Europe was home to two human species. Modern humans shared the continent with Neanderthals, who had already survived its harsh winters for hundreds of thousands of years. They controlled fire, crafted sophisticated stone tools, cared for injured group members, and hunted dangerous animals at close range. They were intelligent, highly adaptable, and among the dominant predators of Ice Age Europe. Yet by about 40,000 years ago, they had disappeared. Scientists still debate why. Climate change, shrinking populations, disease, competition for food, and interbreeding likely all played a role. No single explanation fully answers the mystery. One intriguing hypothesis comes from anthropologist Pat Shipman, who proposed that early partnerships between humans and wolves may have given modern humans a small but meaningful advantage. The idea doesn't claim wolves caused Neanderthal extinction. Instead, it suggests that even a slight improvement in hunting success, repeated over thousands of years, could reshape history. If two groups faced the same climate, hunted the same animals, and one consistently secured just a little more food, its children would survive more often. Its population would grow faster, and it would better withstand harsh winters. Evolution rewards consistency more than occasional brilliance. The idea fits what we already know. Wolves excelled at locating herds and identifying weak animals hidden among hundreds of healthy ones. Humans excelled at planning, coordinating, and killing prey with projectile weapons. Together, they reduced uncertainty, and in the Ice Age, reducing uncertainty often mattered more than increasing strength. Archaeologists have also uncovered massive mammoth bone settlements across Eastern and Central Europe, evidence that some communities repeatedly secured large prey over long periods. Whether wolves contributed directly remains unknown, but the possibility continues to be seriously studied. The evidence, however, has limits. Ancient DNA confirms dogs descended from ancient wolves. Archaeology links early canids with human camps, and behavioral research supports the evolution of reduced fear toward people. Those findings are well supported. The idea that wolf-human cooperation helped modern humans outcompete Neanderthals remains exactly what scientists call it, a plausible, evidence-based hypothesis, not a proven fact. Good science recognizes uncertainty as carefully as evidence. But one thing is clear. By the end of the Ice Age, the relationship had already changed forever. The wolves were no longer simply surviving beside humans. They were becoming dogs. By the end of the Ice Age, the relationship between humans and wolves had become something neither species could have imagined. What began with cautious scavenging beyond the glow of a campfire slowly evolved into one of the most successful partnerships in Earth's history. The change was so gradual that no generation noticed it happening. Children simply grew up seeing calm wolves near camp, and over thousands of years, their presence became normal. Evolution had quietly created something new. Archaeology reveals this transformation. Across Europe and Asia, researchers have uncovered burials where dog-like canids were laid to rest beside humans instead of being butchered like other animals. One of the most famous discoveries comes from Bonn Oberkassel in present-day Germany, where a dog buried with two people around 14,000 years ago showed signs of surviving a serious illness. Veterinary analysis indicates it could only have recovered through weeks of human care. By then, these animals were no longer valued only for what they could do. They had become companions. Other discoveries tell the same story. Dog-like canids reached islands where wild wolves could never have traveled alone, proving they accompanied people. Stable isotope analysis shows some ate the same fish, seals, and other foods as nearby human communities, while ancient DNA reveals their lineage gradually diverged from wild wolves as generations adapted to different diets, environments, and selective pressures. One population continued hunting across the wilderness. The other evolved beside humanity. Over time, that split became permanent. The partnership changed both species. Dogs expanded the human senses, detecting prey, predators, strangers, and danger long before people could. Humans, in turn, gave calmer wolves reliable food, greater security, and a future shaped by natural selection instead of constant competition. Over countless generations, evolution transformed not only their bodies and behavior, but even the muscles that allowed dogs to make more expressive eye contact with humans, strengthening communication in ways wolves never developed. The Ice Age eventually ended. Mammoths disappeared. The frozen steppe became forests and grasslands. Human civilizations rose and fell, but one companion remained. From hunting camps to modern cities, dogs never stopped walking beside us. Because the greatest partnership in human history wasn't built through conquest. It was built through survival. 30,000 years ago, a wolf stepped cautiously toward the edge of a human campfire. It wasn't trying to change history. It was simply looking for its next meal. That small decision, repeated by countless wolves across thousands of generations, changed the future of two species. Humans never conquered wolves, and wolves never surrendered to humans. Instead, evolution rewarded patience over fear, cooperation over conflict, and adaptation over strength. What began as cautious scavenging became tolerance. Tolerance became trust. Trust became partnership. That partnership helped humans hunt more efficiently, detect danger sooner, and survive one of the harshest climates our species has ever faced. In return, wolves found a safer, more reliable path through an unpredictable world. Over thousands of years, natural selection transformed them into the first animal to share humanity's journey. The mammoths vanished. The Ice Age ended. Empires rose and fell. Civilizations transformed the world. Yet one companion never left our side. Today, dogs still guide the blind, locate disaster survivors, detect disease, protect families, and sleep beside the descendants of the same people their ancestors once watched from beyond the firelight. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't that humans changed wolves, or that wolves changed humans. It's that two predators survived because they learned something stronger than fear. They learned to survive together.